When I first met Grant Calloway, I thought I'd found the perfect business partner, charismatic, experienced, and charmingly confident. He had a way of speaking that made people believe in him instantly. Investors, clients, even the most skeptical board members, he could win them over with that smooth voice and those well-rehearsed smiles. I was more cautious by nature, more detail-oriented, the one who spent nights poring over contracts and financial models. Together, we made a powerful team. At least that's what I believed for the first 3 years of running our company, Noven Edge Consulting. We'd started it in a small rented office with peeling paint and flickering lights. I still remember the thrill of signing our first client, a mid-sized tech firm that trusted two ambitious entrepreneurs to rebrand them. Within months, our reputation exploded. By the end of our second year, we were pulling in multi-million-dollar contracts. It felt like we were unstoppable. And through it all, Grant was the face of the company, while I was the backbone. I didn't mind. I liked being the strategist behind the curtain. But success changes people. Or maybe it reveals who they've always been. The first red flag came when I noticed Grant becoming secretive. He started taking calls behind closed doors, stepping out of meetings to handle urgent matters. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Growth came fast, and he was handling new investor relations. But when I caught him red-handed lying about a client's feedback, telling me they'd approved a budget when they hadn't, I started paying attention. One night, long after everyone had left the office, I decided to look through the shared drive to review our ongoing deals. That's when I stumbled across a folder I didn't recognize, labeled Equity Updates. My curiosity overrode my hesitation. Inside were drafts of legal documents, agreements that mentioned a transfer of shares, my shares, or rather, a transfer of our company's controlling interest, 51%. At first, I thought it was just an exploratory proposal, but the more I read, the more my stomach dropped. The buyer was a known competitor, Solentis Group. They'd been trying to acquire us for months, but I'd rejected every offer. And here was Grant, the man who had promised we'd never sell out, negotiating the deal behind my back. I remember sitting in the dim glow of my computer screen, my hands trembling as I scrolled through the terms. He wasn't just planning to sell, he'd already agreed to it. The documents bore his signature, waiting only for a final legal confirmation. If the deal went through, Solentis would own the majority of Noven Edge, and Grant would receive a generous personal payout, millions, far more than our current valuation justified. I, on the other hand, would be reduced to a minority partner in the company I had built from scratch. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced, oscillating between anger, disbelief, and icy calm. But then I remembered something. Months earlier, during our second funding round, I'd insisted we update the company's shareholder agreement. At the time, Grant had grumbled about it, said I was too paranoid, but I'd been firm. I'd included a clause that restricted ownership transfer without unanimous consent. It was a safety net, one even he seemed to have forgotten existed. The next morning, I walked into the office pretending nothing was wrong. Grant greeted me with his usual grin, as if he hadn't just tried to sell my life's work. "Morning, partner," he said, sipping his espresso. "Big day, meeting with Solentis later." I forced a smile. "Oh, anything I should know?" "Just some partnership talk," he said casually, not meeting my eyes. "You know, synergy discussions." Synergy. The word burned in my ears. I wanted to scream, but instead, I nodded, collected, calculating. "Of course, let's talk after." The moment he left for his meeting, I called our company lawyer, a sharp woman named Ruth Levine, who'd helped draft our founding documents. When I told her what I'd found, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then she said, "Ava, don't confront him yet. Bring me everything you have, every email, every file." That day, I gathered evidence quietly, screenshots, document timestamps, emails he'd sent from his company address to Solentis executives. Ruth went to work fast. She filed a notice with the state's corporate registrar flagging any pending ownership change as subject to review. Then she submitted a cease and desist letter to Solentis, citing the restrictive clause in our shareholder agreement. It was a bold move, but legal, airtight. 2 days later, Grant stormed into my office, face flushed, eyes blazing. "What the hell did you do?" I looked up calmly. "I protected my company." "Our company," he shouted, slamming his hand on my desk. "You're sabotaging a deal that would have made us both rich." "No," I said quietly. "You're sabotaging our integrity." "You lied, Grant. You tried to sell what wasn't yours to sell." He scoffed, pacing like a caged animal. "You think you can stop Celantis? They've already wired the funds. The sale's done." I smiled then, a small, cold curve of my lips. "No, it's not. The clause invalidates any transfer without my signature. And since you conveniently forgot that part, the deal is null and void. Legally, the shares revert to the original holders." His expression faltered. "You're bluffing." I leaned forward. "Am I?" The silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. Then he stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. Over the next week, chaos unfolded. Celantis tried to push back, threatening legal action, but when Ruth produced the full shareholder contract, signed by both of us, they backed off immediately. They wanted no part in a fraudulent transaction. Their lawyers advised them to reverse the deal before it turned into a corporate scandal. Grant, desperate and cornered, called me one evening. "Ava, please," he said, his voice shaking for the first time. "We can fix this. You'll what?" I interrupted. "Pretend it never happened? Go back to stabbing me in the back quietly?" He fell silent. I continued, my tone cool and steady. "You breached our partnership trust, Grant. You violated the agreement, which means under clause 14.3, your shares are forfeit. I'm acquiring them at nominal value, $1. The sound of his breath caught. "You can't." "Oh, but I can," I said, "and I already did. The paperwork's filed." He tried fighting it, of course, hired his own lawyers, threw threats, even spread rumors that I'd manipulated the documents. But every claim fell apart under scrutiny. The paper trail was clear. His betrayal was undeniable. When the final ruling came through, confirming my sole ownership of Novanedge, I felt a strange mix of victory and exhaustion. I'd saved the company, but it had come at a price. The trust I'd once had in partnerships, in teamwork, was gone. The day Grant cleared out his office, he avoided my gaze. He packed in silence, the clatter of boxes echoing through the empty corridor. As he left, he paused at the door. "You know, Ava," he said quietly, "you think you won, but no one survives alone forever." I met his eyes. Then it's a good thing I learned how. He gave a bitter smile and walked away, disappearing down the hall. I never saw him again. In the months that followed, Novanedge transformed. I restructured the leadership, built a culture of transparency, and brought in people who valued ethics over ego. We didn't just recover, we grew stronger. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very betrayal that almost destroyed the company became the reason it thrived. Still, late at night, when the office was quiet and the city lights flickered outside, I sometimes thought about how close I came to losing everything. I'd learned that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. It often wears a smile and calls you partner. But I'd also learned something else. Power isn't about control or money, it's about foresight, the ability to see danger before it sees you. And maybe, in some twisted way, Grant taught me that lesson better than anyone else could. Because when the world thinks it can outsmart you, the greatest revenge is proving you were always 3 steps ahead.
You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.